Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tech Sharmit podcast. Today I'm honored to introduce a very special guest, Aneesh Lal, who is joining us from United States of America. Anish is a distinguished leader in the software industry with more than 19 plus years of experience. Anish has made a significant impact in the tech space through his expertise in cloud computing, containers, and microservices, while also excelling in the technical communication and leadership. He is one of the well-known Microsoft MVP, FBCS, and these recognition highlights his contribution to the tech community both as a thought leader and as a mentor to aspiring professional. So today in this episode, we will explore Anish's journey in the software industry, his thoughts on future of application architecture, and the key lesson he has learned throughout his career. But before we dive in, I would like to thank Anish for joining us today in this episode. And now I request you to please initiate the discussion by telling us something about yourself.
Um, Hi, thanks for having me here, Amit. So, first, I'm not such an important person, but, to put things lightly. And I, as he said, I probably wouldn't have should have updated my LinkedIn. It's just over 21 years in the software industry at this point. I started my career with a very small Canadian firm which had a branch in Trivandrum in Kerala in 2004, right after college, right? So over these 20 years, I have worked across different domains, different industries, healthcare, computer makers like Dell, um, insurance companies, finance companies, tech companies, real estate as of now, and even for the government, New York City for 10
Okay.
years. So it has been an interesting journey. And once again, I mean, thank you for having me here. And this is an honor. And I'm so humble to be here.
All right. So thank you so much, Anish, for this introduction. And now we would love to hear more about your journey. So let's just start by diving into your story itself. So please just share a bit about your journey into the software industry, like how you got started and like what path you followed to got where you are right now. So how was your journey?
Okay, so I never had any aspiration to be an engineer to begin with. I wanted to be a teacher, right?
Okay.
And then, probably I believe in my 11th grade at that time, it was called pre-degree. I happened to see a game called Dave, which is an MS-DOS game in one of the carnivals, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
was very intrigued by it, how it is made and how that works and things like that, which actually um, made me decide to look into what or who are building those. So that's when I
Okay.
learned about a career path in software industry. Nobody Everybody should have a mentor. I didn't had one, so I didn't know. I just wandered around, learned about it, and then happened to go through an entrance examination to enter into this engineering field. So there was no
Okay.
pressure from family. There was none of that. I could have chosen whatever I wanted to choose. So at the end of the day, I became a software engineer because I wanted to become a software engineer, is what I would say, which is a
Okay.
good thing because I could still love it to a great extent. There are some hate parts to it, but still love it to a great extent. And that's the beginning of my career. As I was saying, after the college and Bachelor of Technology in Computer Science, I I got into a small firm. I fought with C++. I did C++ for quite a long time. And I know it happened to be one of my luckiest thing to do rather than jumping into a very high level language,
Mm-hmm.
something which is very close to ground, something which is very close to machine. And I was able to understand the language inside out by working about 4 5 years in it, and which gave me an ability to pick up languages and read languages, even though I cannot write. Sometimes I can read languages without even
Okay.
knowing the name of the language. So, because of that. So that is how things started. And I mean, if you have any specific questions, please do ask.
Yeah, sure. So before we proceed, I just want to ask one thing that you just mentioned that C++ was your first programming languages from which you
Mhm,
started. So we
mhm,
all know that yes, there are some institution who also promote, who also encourage students to start with C and C++. So I just want to
right.
know about your thought. Like, is it the right way to start in 2025? Like, or you would like to recommend any particular technology that yes, along with the basics C, C++, you can start with these technology. So anything in your.
I Yeah, in my opinion,
Mhm.
knowing the fundamentals is key. I mean, I would say it's not really needed for the job, right?
Okay.
The best language to get a job is JavaScript or TypeScript, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, right? Which where you can build apps, front end, even back end using Node.js. And it's kind of is JavaScript developers are in high demand. If you look at Stack Overflow, developer survey throughout the years, last few years, JavaScript-based frameworks, JavaScript-based things are always on the top, like React.js
Right.
or Node.js. But that doesn't mean that you should stick to that. And in my opinion, I mean, it could just be me because I still have a soft corner for C++. But in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion, knowing or C++ help you see through things. It's like JavaScript is designed for browsing at the end of the day, right? So it just masks a lot of things which happens behind the scenes. C++ is several levels down. It's right above assembly language. I would say C and C++ is right above that. Object oriented enough, but not machine enough, right? So you are right in that spot, soft spot, where you really know the computer fundamentals. You can understand how things happen behind the scenes, the ones and zeros, the ins and outs. You can
Mm-hmm.
even, in C++, you can even put things into the registers. I mean, sometimes when you say register and you go to a coding academy, which actually really happened to me, the coding academy was teaching JavaScript to the students. They thought registers are an NPM package, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the disconnect happens, right? Could just be my opinion, but I still feel you have to pick something which caters to developing a career. Also, you are an engineer, right? You are
Correct.
analytical.
Yeah.
You need to know that the need to know makes you an engineer. You have that rigor in you. Go with C++ as well. I'm not going to say that stick with C++, start with that, but I'm going to say that something which gets you a job plus something which knows how that job was created, right?
Correct.
So
Right.
that's where C++ stands, right? The best JavaScript compilers I hear were written in C++. So yeah, of course you can write JavaScript, but learn how all of that is coming about is with some language which is very close to the ground. This is just my take on it, right? But after a few years, when you're looking into things, when you're debugging, when you're going such deep uh, into problems, solving things, memory leakages. Yeah, all of the knowledge you gain from knowing about memory from C++ is going to come and help you.
Okay. All right. All right. So let's proceed further. And now I just want to ask one more thing regarding about one of your core expertise. So we all know that one of the thing that stands out about your career is your passion for for solving the real world problems through software. So, can you please share a story like where you think that yes, your work directly impacted a customer or stakeholder in a meaningful way? I know like there might be many projects or code that you have delivered to for such kind of solution, but the one which is very close to your heart.
Okay. When I was doing it, there is one. When I was doing it, it wasn't close to my heart. But after about 15 years, it is. So in 2000, I mean, after the first company, I joined Philips Healthcare in Bangalore. where
Mm-hmm.
we were building certain type of machines, bunch of software engineers, and the machines were not built there, if I recall. So the machines were for scanning mice and small animals,
Mm-hmm.
and was to help cancer studies and other progressions in the body, by creating 3D images like PET, SPEC, things like that, right? So
Okay.
the technology was named Emalytics, which was one of the first full product coming out of Philips Healthcare Bangalore at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And the project was shelved, I believe, because of recession in 2008. So that's around that time I left Philips. So at that time, you were working on it. It was half C++. It was at that time there was something called Managed C++ and CLR C++. So there was some .NET, some C Sharp, and mixed with C++ we were writing for some of these image processing algorithms
Mm-hmm.
for this machine, right? For the viewer of the machine, like how do you the 3D images you just scan through time and how things are progressing, is cancer is progressing and things like that on certain animals, right? And after 10, 15 years, I looked at that project and I was like, okay, a lot of universities are referring it,
Yeah.
in their in their research studies. They use the machine. It's still being sold. And it is an interesting thing to see, right? You just did something and you forgot about it, and you come back and you're like, "Oh, it must be probably is helping cancer patients now."
Yeah.
It's an interesting thought, right? I'm not gonna say that at that time it is not the thought that I want to solve a real world problem. I'm just a junior engineer, just 2 years into my career. My focus were making money, and I had a lot of ego, right? So these two things were driving me at that time. But looking back at it, it gives you a sense of satisfaction. To be
Yeah.
honest, much more beyond any other projects I have done. I have done bigger projects. I have done much more complex project probably across different companies and domains. But this one is, you look back at it, you kind of feel like, yeah, I was there, and there is a low I can go. Right? Sometimes I pick jobs and based on what I did at that time. Right now, I'm like,
Correct.
I cannot do certain things because I did that, So
Yeah.
it makes me feel happy. So
Okay.
I don't know how it impacts customers. Here is the thing. It certainly does right now, which is what I read. But as I said, it didn't strike me at all that it would ever. I just wanted to learn something, make money, and that's how it all came about. But at the end of the day, it turned out to be something which is meaningful, is a guiding light
Correct. Yeah.
towards of my choosing at this point.
Okay. All right. Apart from this, Anish, like you are also known for your ability to bridge the gap between technical and business walls. So, how do you align technical decision with broader business goals, especially when you are working with a non-technical stakeholder? So, did you face any challenges while working with a non-technical stakeholders, or how you accommodate the things?
It's an interesting question, but in the beginning, I was, as I said, I carry a lot of ego. I was thinking I was always right. I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking technology is a solution, and eventually, it takes some time. I believe every engineer has to go through that. It's a phase, like marriage, I guess. So you have to mature enough in that, right? So eventually, I understand that technology is just an enabler, right?
Mm-hmm.
Customers are not looking for X, Y, or Z, they are looking for buttons and clickable stuff and very simple things. They don't really care about what goes behind and what you do, Node.js or React.js. They don't care about any of that, right? So at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, we present something to them. It should work. Simple as that. They
Yeah.
swipe, it should swipe. They click, it should click. That's it. So I started understanding that aspect of that. It took me some time, right? And then I was able to communicate in that aspect. That is when I started winning people, right? Winning non-technical stakeholders is key. It builds you trust.
Correct.
You have to speak the language they speak. So engineers are, it's very hard for engineers to speak their language. We throw in so many technical jargons at
Yeah.
non-technical folks. So what I generally do is I pick up an analogy which actually resonate with you from the real world. I pick an
Mm-hmm.
example. hey, this is similar to this in real world, right? Okay, this is similar to A. This is like, oh, AI agents and stuff like that. So I always tell them, AI agents are like, okay, it's like you're walking into Home Depot and you have many tools. Each one of them is an agent and probably from different things and, things like that, right? So, and then you're building something there in a workshop, right? You're given a
Yeah.
bunch of tools, you take that tools, and every agent has that, and they build something. It's very easy for them to understand too what I'm talking about, rather than I'm throwing so many technical jargons at them, right?
Right.
So that is important. Second is building trust. It's probably about human psychology, right? So I always think that when you join a new team, I always do this. I always listen in rather than chime in. I
Okay.
listen to the conversation. I listen to how conversations progress
Mm-hmm.
across different meetings. I do that probably for a week or two. And then I understand the pulse of the team, right? Who is
Okay.
what? And and slowly ease into the conversation. That's what I generally do rather than, you know, going in full force, trying to show your might, trying to show you're something, you're technical guru or whatever that is. We just, eventually ease into the conversation and then build and deliver something which instills trust in other people. The
Yeah.
moment you start doing it, the business and non-technical stockholders eventually generally start trusting you. That's the moment from which you start getting the leverage. You need the leverage to do technical stuff which doesn't add any business value. For example, tracing and tracking and logging and refactoring and it's no business value. It doesn't add a new button to the UI. Why are we doing
Yeah.
it? They were going to ask that question, right? So unless and until they trust you and that you are able to tell them that it is important for long-term maintainability of the project, some people do understand, but some people don't. So
Mm-hmm.
without a trust you can never establish that relationship. I
Correct.
believe trust and relationship is the way to work with non-tech folks, and that is the key.
Okay. All right. So I think with these qualities and your technical expertise, you have been awarded with two prestigious titles, which is Microsoft MVP and FBCS. So could you please tell a bit about these two titles, like what exactly it is and how it has impacted your journey after that?
Okay, so long story short, I wanted to become an MVP. I thought MVPs are the best of the best people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I stand corrected. Eventually, after becoming an MVP, I understand that MVPs are the best of the best in helping others. That's it. It's not
Yeah.
that they are the finest. I know, I know better engineers than me who are not MVPs, right? They
Mm-hmm.
are 10 times better than me. They just don't express themselves in a public discourse or a public medium to help others because of their choosing. They don't want they don't have time or they don't that's not something they are into, right?
Yeah.
So these things, especially MVPs, FBCS, and all of that, when people look at it, or when I was not an MVP, I was looking at it as these are technology expertise, but I look
Mm-hmm.
at it as these are folks who have time to help others. That's it. Say,
Yeah.
it's as simple as it, right? So these are the people who put their knowledge out there, right? Even if it is minimal, right? I'm learning AI. I write about it. I'm not an AI expert, right? That's the whole idea of writing a blog. So I sometimes consider these as internal learnings. I write, I remember more rather than I learn and read. So I
Correct.
write. So that is the thing, right? So these recognitions at this point means that to me. Before it meant different, but after being this, it means different. So it the way it influenced my career, I would say that three, four key different things, right? I meet people like you, one, right? The way you found me is because I'm an
Yeah.
MVP. I think so. And I go to events which is catered to interesting people.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a peek at technologies which are new and upcoming. Like, for example, newer. a GitHub Copilot comes in early on, I can get to the early preview version. I mean, even before people would even hear about it. That's another thing.
Yeah.
I was part of the Microsoft Expert Network. Not I was, I am still part of Microsoft Expert Network, which helps founders build using, Microsoft Founders Hub, right? There is a Founders Hub, and I get to meet founders, hear their stories. It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
And I am able to go to events and meet people who are in the similar shoes as me and learn from each other and have the sense of community. This is all that extra icing on the cake which you get from these titles. You get to go to a lot of places virtually and physically where you wouldn't otherwise get to learn a lot about technology, people, new businesses, startups, and things like that. This is what is, I would say, the most important thing. And lastly, I would say people think you are an expert, which is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So, which helps you get a new job or whatnot, right? So you're an MVP. People will have some type newfound respect for you for whatever reason. And if something comes out of it, of course, take it. That's all I would say for titles like this.
Yeah, and being a MVP, I can also relate with these things because I'm also agree that these kind of things are not only for achieving those certificates and to show off those badges, because
Hmm.
all like every MVP or maybe any other prestigious title, they have some passion for sharing their knowledge. So if you are
Absolutely.
into that, then for sure, like you are like those who wanted to pursue or those who wanted to become an MVP or any other prestigious title, so they can follow the steps to become it. But please make it very clear in your mind that if you have a passion for sharing your knowledge, then it would be much easier for you instead of just
Mhm.
grabbing the certificates, because it won't work. One time you can achieve it, but after that, if you are not interested in sharing your knowledge, then maybe it might be not that much of beneficial.
That is true. I agree. Wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah. Okay, so Anish, like you are actively involved in the tech community, building a startup community, like and newsletters, running events, speaking at various events, mentoring, and contribution to various open source projects. So, could you please share some piece of work through which you have recently contributed to this IT industry or maybe the Microsoft community?
Okay, so let me pick that piece by piece, right? So
Yeah.
first, I built a startup community in New York City called Startup Plus,
Mm-hmm.
which has about 25,000 members. And
Yeah.
I conducted about 75 events, about 12, 13 of them pitch events, brought in about 120 founders to do 5-minute pitches to about 400, 500 investors, right?
Okay.
Also, I did a lot of networking events. So these are physical events, not virtual. There is a logistics and cost, and it's craziness involved when you run a physical event compared to you do it on the computer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why I come up with something like that is, it was just out of necessity, uh, right after the pandemic, or I would say in the middle of the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
when the vaccination cards were needed to get into spaces. Space had number of headcount limitations, max capacity limitations. People were checking vaccination cards at the door. And that time, everybody was doing Zoom networking, right?
Yeah. Right.
So Zoom networking, Zoom happy hours, and all of that thing, and which I was tired of hearing and doing. I never did even one of them. I didn't even understand the concept of networking in computers, right? So I thought that I was building an app called Remito at that time with two of my friends. It's a it's a money transfer comparison marketplace kind of an app, which
Okay.
is available in Android and iOS. So I wanted to know how people network. I'm an engineer. I have no idea to network, to market, to build customers, to scale, and things like that. So what I did is I was like, I wanted to go to an event. I looked for one. I couldn't find one in New York City. And this, if I can't find anything in New York City in the middle of the pandemic, nowhere in the world, nobody else is doing anything, right? So I built one and brought in about 6, 7 people in a basement lounge, and that's how it started. And it just, interestingly enough, it grew beyond the purpose of why I started it.
Yeah.
And currently, I consistently bring in about 120, 140 attendees. I cap it at that. I generally have a wait list of 200 people for every event.
Okay.
It's that big. I don't want to grow much more bigger, which is not manageable for me by myself. So there is no big backers, but I still run it every first Thursday of the month, sometimes occasionally pitch events and things like that. So that is how the startup community came up about. And I built a newsletter on top of it to have a website, Discord, and a bunch of different resources for my attendees and community to thrive on, right?
Hmm.
And I have founder stories from those who pitch for me, and and networking write-ups on the newsletter, and the newsletter is growing huge now, right? So now about the open source projects, um, I was doing when Angular came out, the Angular, not the Angular JS, but the
Yeah.
Angular, which is the rewrite of Angular JS, came out
Hmm.
and was still in beta or alpha. I was looking for a PDF viewer in it. I couldn't find one with the way I want. So I just created a simple wrapper for Mozilla's PDF.js and put it out there in NPM. And I was expecting about 100 downloads or
Yeah.
150. I was curious, how to build an NPM library, and it just grew out to be about 6 million downloads as of today, right? I wouldn't say it's not the best library out there. It is because you are at the right place at the right time. It's a very important thing.
Correct.
I would say that people can build better things than me, but they just not going to hit the numbers I get because I already surpass. People are going to look at the version history of the library. They're going to look at the number of downloads and they're going to choose that, not someone with 10 downloads, even if the library is better. So my take on that is it is not the quality of the work you do, but also the timing is very important.
Correct. Yeah.
And another thing I do with open source is work with the .NET Foundation, which is and it's a community behind pretty much everything open source in .NET. And those who work with .NET Foundation gets the public announcements and get to their newsletters and get support and help for building and running projects in open source .NET stuff, right? So for example,
Hmm.
akka.NET or things like that. So I have been aligned with their membership and outreach committee for quite a while. I like it. It's not the passion for open source projects which drives me, but it's the people. I like some of the people there. So I enjoy doing a little bit something outside of work to have some interesting conversations, build some small projects, build the little websites for them to run their events or handle their memberships and things like that. So that is pretty much it. Uh, you know, I think I answered your question, but it was an
Yeah.
elaborate answer. I understand, but I believe I did get to most
Yeah.
of the things I want to talk about.
Right, right. Just want to ask one more thing here. Like you just
Mhm.
mentioned about the newsletter. So let's say, what is the procedure? Like how anyone can get those newsletter? Like, is there any specific criteria that we are supposed to follow?
Mm, No, you just go to Substack and look for Startup Plus, and you can subscribe to my newsletter. But
Okay.
I consider Substack has a great platform to build newsletters.
Mm-hmm.
I did hear about it. I started using it. And the thing is that unlike other platforms where, for example, like meetup.com,
Mm-hmm.
where you post your meetup, where you don't have control of your, like, you don't have access to the email address of the attendees or other information about them without paying a hefty fee. Substack is a simple platform where you own your own data. So you build a newsletter, you have followers, you have subscribers, you control
Yeah.
that, and you can even download the data in its entirety and take it elsewhere. So I consider
Okay.
that platform to be very authentic and advertisement free. unlike Medium. And also I consider that to be like, subscription driven. So the business model is each of the newsletter creators have a subscription based pricing plan. I don't
Okay.
have. My newsletter is free, but those who write for a living, you think about it as a platform for writers, right?
Okay.
So even though it's a newsletter, it just gets and lands on people's email addresses or inboxes instead of being on their feed. So, for example, in Instagram, you say I have 1 million followers, maybe like 10 of them actually see your post. Uh, you see what I'm saying? But if
Right.
in Substack, I say I have 10,000 subscribers, all the 10,000 of them will get my email if I post something. So that's the difference. And I get to see
Okay.
how many open it and things like that. So it's actually a very powerful platform for me. And I have big plans to host founder stories, podcast, and things like that as it grows. That's the idea.
All right. Okay, so Anish, now we wanted to know a bit about your journey in terms of the people that have met you, or the key people who have guided you or inspired you. So looking back on your journey, your incredible journey, like who were the key people you think like yes, these are the person who have guided you, inspired you, and supported you throughout your journey.
I have a lot of people, when you look into a 22-year long career, right? So
Yeah.
I don't want to miss out a lot of people, but some folks I can think right off my head is the Shankar, who was a mentor in Sapient
Okay.
during the. So I was a Windows engineer. As I said early on in my career, I was an engineer who had a lot of head weight and ego.
Mm-hmm.
I was like C++ is great, and that's the way to go. And Windows applications are powerful. Web and HTML is crap. You know what I'm saying? So this
Yeah.
guy is like, "You want to join my team and we'll build a web application?" And I was like, "No." He's like, "You have to come." So, and we both worked in Philips. We didn't knew each other, and we both ended up in Sapient. And he's like, try something new. And then I did try something new, and it was an interesting thing. And that's how I became a web developer, by the way,
Okay.
after about 8 years into my career, right? So, so Shankar, a fantastic leader, and I always think of him as how a leader should be, right? Very
Okay.
authentic and simple and assertive enough, but friendly. So, and another person I can think of is A.K. Narayan from Philips, who
Mm-hmm.
was a mentor, who still is with Philips, unbelievable, probably 25, 30 years into the company. Uh, and as a junior engineer, the conversation with these kind of people, even though you don't think that this is mentoring at that time, that is
Mm-hmm.
actually mentoring. The conversations about technology, the conversations about challenges, career, talking to people, all of that, the insights they give kind of shape you, right, going on into the rest of your career. Similar to that, I have a few other people, Geno in SEA, interesting conversations we always had about technology and what to build and startups and new stuff. Yeah, and few more other people. Manjunath in my, he's with Microsoft right now. We were together in Dell, and he taught me how to play ping pong. And we used to have a lot of conversation in Dell's ping pong and ping pong tables, right?
Okay.
So Ayyappan, when I was with Geico, I was working for Geico as a consultant when first time when I was in this country, and we had long conversations about dependency injection and inversion of control, and I really couldn't get my head around why the hell you want to do that, right? So that's these are some interesting people, some technology conversations, some non-technical conversations, but these conversations generally they are the guiding lights, sometimes they don't
Correct.
think it that way. I think that none of these folks probably think, what did I say to this guy? But when you look up to people, when you hear from them, and it alters your path, it's kind of interesting.
Yes, I agree with this thing. All right. So thank you so much, Anish, for taking out the time and for sharing so much information and your expertise with everyone. It was
Sure.
pleasure. It was our pleasure to have you here on the show, and I hope you also enjoyed the discussion.
I certainly did. And I also like your work, as I was even telling you earlier before the podcast. Keep doing what you're doing. I have been looking into your work much more in LinkedIn, and keep inspiring young engineers. Uh, and there is only one thing I have to say. You're an engineer for a reason. You have to be analytical. You have to be analytical and human. And I was only analytical. That's what my fault was. And now I'm more human and less analytical. So which is good. I think that's you don't have to focus on that. It's gonna come to you. It's gonna come to you with experience.
Yeah. All right. Thank you once again. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Bye.